The British papers and pundits are full of claims that the UK has got off lightly from the Trump tariffs. Indeed, that this is our Brexit dividend at last. Really? Here's a few minutes on why you should be, at the very least, pretty sceptical of both ideas. First, has Britain got off lightly, with only a 10% tariff versus the EU's 20% and higher still for other countries? Well, no, not really. A 10% tariff is still very significant and will be damaging to a whole suite of UK industries. That's what we've got for Keir Starmer putting in endless diplomatic effort and hugging Trump as closely as possible, irrespective of what he does or says. 2. 10% is not a special deal. Other countries to get 10% include Brazil, Turkey, Argentina, El Salvador, Peru, to name just a few. Viewed through that prism, it's hardly a vindication of the special relationship. And that's despite the fact that the UK is one of the few countries with which the US actually enjoys a healthy balance of trade. 3. The UK's most valuable export to the US is cars, and those will still have a tariff of 25% imposed, which will be really damaging to the UK auto sector. That's in addition to more substantial tariffs which are already in place on UK steel and aluminium, two struggling industries. And 4. Crucially, even if 10% is relatively positive, it ignores the far bigger problem. One way or another, if these tariffs sustain, they will create a major shock to the world economy, resulting in slower growth, maybe even a global recession. That will affect the UK even if we secure a trade deal with the US and the elimination of these tariffs altogether. And what about this idea that we can thank Brexit for our preferential treatment? The Telegraph even said today that Trump's tariffs prove Brexit was the best decision ever made. Well, no, not really. That is mental. Yes, our tariff rate is less than it would have been if we'd still been in the EU, but that's a bit like giving £100 to Peter, receiving £20 from Paul, and congratulating yourself on a job well done. We're getting a better deal from the US because of Brexit, but we're getting a terrible deal from the EU because of Brexit. And the EU is by far our biggest trading partner. Overall, the Office for Budget Responsibility has said that the UK economy will be 4% smaller than it would have been without Brexit. Our trade intensity with the EU will be 15% down on where it would have been in the medium term, and the overall economic damage will be comparable to the damage created by COVID. So think of it this way. The tariffs are like 10 lashes, and if we'd stayed in the EU, it would have been 20 lashes. But Brexit was 100 lashes, and we're still receiving 100 lashes every single year. And remember, the Brexiters also told us that we'd have no problem signing a trade deal with the US, which hasn't happened. On the contrary, Trump just made trade harder, and we haven't signed loads of new trade deals as promised with other countries either. Most of them are just rollovers of what we had before. So far from being a Brexit dividend, what today shows is how isolated we are, neither in a big, massive trade bloc, nor with an especially special relationship with the world's biggest superpower. Far from a moment of triumph, today should be clarifying for our true status in this world order, one which we have partly imposed on ourselves, but few in Britain will dare say so.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.